Hello, I'm Pam Hoffman, Everyday Spacer.
I'm Jeff Miller, 2049 Outfitters.
At Everyday Spacer, we show regular folks how to personally and directly participate in space exploration, science, and astronomy. We're here on Friday nights at 9 p.m. Pacific Time, 12 midnight Eastern Time, and 5 a.m. on Saturday in London. We're broadcasting live from Thousand Oaks, California. Thank you so much for joining us. You know, we've estimated we've done about 100 lives now. And folks in the United States, remember that the time change is going to happen over this weekend. So next Friday, we might be appearing for you in other parts of the world at a different time where you are.
Tonight's guest is Daniel Klopp. He's the Director of Marketing and Business Development for Space Systems in ILC Dover. We'll be back in 6.8 seconds. Okay, Daniel will tell us about the history of developing spacesuits for NASA, including every EVA suit for NASA from Apollo through the present. He will also share what they are doing on the next generation of spacesuits.
It sounds so cool. Dan, tell us about you and what you're doing right now.
So first, a little about me. I, up until 2.5 years ago, I was a everyday person. As you mentioned in the intro, I'm
Perfect.
not I don't come from a long history in the space system, in the space industry. I spent most of my career in high-tech electronics and instrumentation. I have a weird combination of university degrees. I have an undergraduate degree in physics, chemistry, and math. I was a triple major undergrad. And then I went and got an MBA with a concentration in marketing. So I've got this whole left brain, right brain thing going on inside my head that this is a scary place inside here, in case you didn't know. Anyway,
sounds awesome,
I got into the space business almost by accident. A former colleague of mine was looking for a director of marketing and happened to be working at ILC Dover. And lo and behold, long story short, I came to the company, and in the last 2.5 years, I have learned a lot about spacesuits. Given that we are the company that's made every EVA spacesuit, and I'll get into that in a second. Every EVA spacesuit for NASA, from Apollo, the Apollo moon landings, through the EMU suits that are used today on the International Space Station. And we're currently working, as Pam mentioned, on the next generation of spacesuit for that'll be both a replacement for the EMU to be used on space stations, as well as the next round of lunar landings, the Artemis missions.
Wow. That's amazing. And you said there are really basically just 2 companies in the entire world that do that, right?
Yeah, in the last, so there have been 3 companies in the whole history of human space flight that have made EVA spacesuits, but one of them hasn't made a suit for 55 years now.
Oh, wow.
So there's only 2 of us left for the past 55 years. There's ILC Dover, and we're the contractor for NASA. And then by extension, our suits are also used by European Space Agency astronauts, Canadian Space Agency astronauts, JAXA, Japanese Space Agency astronauts. And the other company that makes EVA spacesuits is a Russian company called NPP Zvezda. They make the Orlan suit, and they also have a long history of doing spacesuits for the cosmonauts in the Russian space program. But it's a very specialized industry. There's, as I said, there's only 2 of us that do it. And interestingly enough, spacesuits in the United States are covered under what are known as ITAR restrictions, International Traffic in Arms Regulations. And so we're actually not, we're prohibited by law from selling spacesuits to certain countries, including Russia, China, and a variety of others.
Wow.
So,
hey, Dave, thanks for joining us. Dave is in Australia.
Oh, good day. That was my worst Australian accent there.
So he says
Anyway.
the suits for ISS were modified to provide greater mobility and more tactile glove capability.
Yeah, so there's been there's been a lot of development in spacesuits. There's a rumor going around, and it's a nasty rumor, that the astronauts today are using the same spacesuits that were developed back in the early 1980s. And while that's sort of true in one regard, it's not true in another regard. The fundamental architecture of today's suit, which is called the EMU, the Extravehicular Mobility Unit, was established back in the early 1980s in the shuttle program. And it has evolved considerably since then, specifically the gloves. So interestingly enough, Dave's comment on the gloves. The gloves have evolved considerably since the early versions of that suit. Now, they all sort of look the same, but if you know the subtle details to look for, you can tell the difference between different generations of gloves and other pieces of the spacesuit.
Cool.
Well, yeah, because no matter what you do with the structure, they're still wrapping the thermal protection over it.
Yes, exactly. So the outer layer of a spacesuit is called the TMG, the thermal micrometeoroid garment, and it's always white because white rejects the most radiant energy from the sun. And keeping the astronauts cool is the biggest challenge in space. A lot of people think space is cold, and while it is in sort of a physics sense, it turns out keeping the astronauts warm is not nearly as challenging as keeping them cool.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, because there's no convection. You can only radiate.
Exactly.
Oh,
yeah,
right.
There's two ways their heat are transferred to your body, radiance and conductance. And so that kind of the way I explain it is, here on Earth, if it's a hot day but you're standing in the shade, it's still going to feel hot to you because you're getting the conductance from the surrounding atmosphere. If you step out of the shade into the sun, it feels even hotter because now you're getting the radiance from the sun plus the conductance from the atmosphere. Well, if you don't have any atmosphere around you, you don't have any conductance. So, but you do get radiance. And so on in what they call low Earth orbit, LEO, which is the orbit that the International Space Station orbits, the temperature on the side of the Earth when you're facing where it's facing the sun is about plus 250 degrees Fahrenheit. So it's very, very warm there. And then on the shadow side of the Earth, the temperature is approximately minus 200 degrees Fahrenheit. But that's kind of a funny number because, you know, if you get down to sort of a molecular level, what is temperature? It's molecular motion. So the few molecules that are there are moving very slowly. So, but if it were possible, which it's not, but if it were possible to stick your hand outside the spacecraft or outside the spacesuit unprotected on the shadow side of the Earth, it actually wouldn't feel cold to you because there's so few molecules there that there's nothing that's going to be bouncing into your skin to remove the heat.
Wow. This is fascinating. So
so the movies that shows people freezing as soon as they crack their helmet, no, right?
No.
Not exactly.
Not at all.
Dave had another question. Were each Apollo spacesuit custom made for each of the astronauts in the program? Great question.
Yes, they were, Dave. We actually made two different generations of Apollo suits. There was a suit that was used on Apollo 11 through 14, and then a different suit, a modification of that was used on 15, 16, and 17. And those suits were an all soft architecture, which is different than today's EMU, which has a hard upper torso underneath that cloth. You know, if you peel off the outer layers, and they were rear entry suits, and they were indeed custom tailored for each astronaut because they were essentially a one-piece suit. The gloves and the helmet came off, but everything else was one piece, which is really different than today's EMU suit, which is a modular design. And the suits, we don't have to custom tailor the suits today for each astronaut because we have various size components that get clipped together. and they all have common bearings, common joints. So the shoulder joints are common between all the sizes. So you could have a medium-sized upper torso with a long arm and then a different size glove, and all those joints where they clip together in today's EMU are all common across all the sizes. So you can semi-customize for each astronaut the size. But back in the Apollo day, that's not the way they were made. They were made as a one-piece suit, and so they were custom tailored for each astronaut. And the big difference, by the way, between the early Apollo suits and the later Apollo suits, so the early suits we called the A7L, the later ones were the A7LB. Very creative nomenclature. But the big difference was on the last three Apollo missions, they took the moon buggy with them, the lunar rover, and that required a more mobile lower torso. So the lower torso was modified to make it easier for the astronauts to sit.
Yeah, because they couldn't really bend their legs much in the original ones, could they?
They had much more mobility actually than today's EMU in the lower torso, and I'll get into a reason for that in a second. But they didn't have quite enough to be comfortable sitting for long periods of time in that lunar rover. So we made some modifications to them, and actually there were two different within each of those families. There were two different versions of those suits, because there was one version that was used for the two astronauts that went down to the lunar surface, and there was a different version that was used by the command module pilot that stayed in orbit around the moon. And on the last three Apollo missions, that the person that was the command module pilot actually took a spacewalk on the transit back from the moon. And those are the only three deep space spacewalks that have ever been done by humans.
Wow. So thanks for joining us, Bernadette Wellman. And yes, this is talking about spacesuits. I don't know if design is really what we're going to be able to get into much, because as Dan mentioned, this is specialized and ITAR protected technology, really, right?
Right.
Yeah, you'll know better than I do. And I think we have a couple of more from
Bernadette. Yeah, and we've been kind of comparing and contrasting current and previous ones. How's different? I think you pretty much covered that.
Well, actually, I should talk a little bit about the lower torso, because I mentioned that today's EMU has an even less mobile lower torso than even the first generation of Apollo suits. And that's intentional, because although we call what's done today a spacewalk, it's actually more appropriately termed a space float, because you're not walking on anything.
Yep.
And so we can actually save some mass, some weight in the suit by not putting in much mobility in the lower torso, because it's not needed.
Their
legs are just dangling. Or maybe they get put into those foot harnesses if they have to do something on the Canadarm, but their legs aren't used during the because they're floating in a zero-G environment, a microgravity environment, where and all their movement is done with their hands and arms. They translate, what they call translate, move around the outside of the International Space Station by grabbing those gold handrails that are on the outside. And so all the mobility and dexterity is all in the upper torso and hands.
Yeah, legs don't do too much in microgravity. So let's see what else Bernadette has. What have we learned about from Apollo spacesuit design that reduces radiation exposure? Ooh, what a great question.
So the major form of radiation that we have to worry about is bands of the UV spectrum that don't exist here on Earth because our atmosphere filters them out. So it's the really high energy end of the UV spectrum that's really close to X-ray. So the electromagnetic spectrum is a continuum that goes from radio waves all the way up through gamma waves. And somewhere in the middle there is, or actually towards the top third, is the visible light spectrum.
The stuff we see,
so that's what we see. But then above visible is UV. Below visible is infrared. but above visible is UV. But there are the two bands of UV that we see here on Earth are UVA and UVB. And of those, the UVB band is more harmful to our skin. That's the one we need to protect against.
So sunburn,
for the sunburn. But then when you're outside the Earth's atmosphere and you don't have that filtering effect of the atmosphere, you run into UVC and what's called VUV, vacuum ultraviolet. And those are really high energy bands of the UV spectrum that are problematic for unprotected skin. So we do things in the outer layer. That's that layer that I referred to earlier as the TMG, and that's one of the big reasons that's white and always has been white and probably always will be white, unless there's some major breakthrough in material science that's unforeseen at this point. White just rejects the color white and the type of material we use. It's a blend of several different fibers that are woven together in that outer layer that reject that high energy UV.
Wow, interesting. Okay, what else do we have? Thanks, Dave. What did an Apollo spacesuit cost? Yeah, there it is.
So
you predicted it.
Back in the mid late 60s and early 70s, I think, again, I wasn't around in those days, but from what I understand of the company history, those suits in dollars of that day were about $200,000 each.
Wow. That seems very low to me. Very interesting.
Well, there's been a lot of inflation since then.
Yeah, that's true.
In those days, those days, $20,000 would buy a house in California.
Ah, got it. Okay.
So, right. Yes, it was a lot of money.
That helps make a comparison.
Yeah.
All right. What else you got, Dave?
I spent a day with Buzz Aldrin by invitation at his home in Beverly Hills in 2008. I remember him saying the Apollo suits weighed, I think, around 80 kilograms. Is that close?
With the life support backpack, they actually weighed a little more than that. They were closer to 100 kilograms, about 220 pounds here on Earth.
Yeah, weight, mass, they're a little different.
So weight, so you got 220 pounds, which is a force, and 80 kilograms, which is a mass. And of course, mass is a property of matter, so it stays constant regardless of gravity. So yes, they were. The suit itself was a little less than that, but then with the life support backpack on, and that was a big difference also between the Apollo era suits and today's suits, is the life support backpack was or could be unmounted from the suit, and because those suits serve dual duty. Today we use two different kinds of spacesuits, one for launch entry, launch and re-entry, and a different spacesuit then for EVA. Well, back in the Apollo era, the crafts were so small and the rockets were couldn't lift enough weight that they couldn't afford to have two different spacesuits. So one suit served both duties, and that's why you had to be able to take the life support backpack off of those Apollo suits, because they used those as launch entry suits too in a sitting position.
Oh yeah, it'd be hard to sit with something hanging off your
giant backpack on. Whereas today's suit, the EMU that's used on the International Space Station, the backpack is permanently integrated to the upper torso.
Okay.
So
those suits are only used for EVAs.
Right. Well, and I don't think it occurred to them to have different suits in the Apollo era. I don't think that's even a thought that had occurred to them, because, flight suits, we had high level jets that they used flight suits for. I think they modified those for Gemini.
Right.
And then just carried through.
Yeah. The Mercury mission was almost purely, those suits were made by B.F. Goodrich for the Mercury 7 astronauts. And those were purely high altitude flight suits. And then you're correct. The Gemini missions were where the first American EVAs happened, and those were a modified high altitude flight suit. And we didn't make those. As I understand the history, we bid on that contract with NASA, and we didn't win that. We've also bid on the Apollo suits and did win those because our design had much more mobility than when it was fully pressurized than those high altitude flight suits.
Yeah.
High altitude flight suits really are designed for the vast majority of their life. They are worn unpressurized. They only pressurize in case of a rapid cabin depressurization, which is, obviously an emergency condition. So, so they weren't really designed to be worn pressurized all the time, although they did use them in that configuration on the spacewalks in the Gemini missions, but they weren't really designed for that. And that's where our design turned out to be the winning design of it in a fully pressurized configuration, which is necessary for an EVA. So walking around on the moon or doing a deep space spacewalk, like I mentioned, they did on the last 3 Apollo missions. Those were, our design was much more mobile.
Yeah, it sounds like there's a pretty big difference between pressurized and unpressurized as far as like what happens with the astronauts and how they feel in them and stuff.
It's kind of like being inside a balloon.
Yes. Yeah, the suits get very stiff when they're pressurized. And so it's actually pretty easy to make a spacesuit that protects somebody in space, that maintains pressure. The real magic that we bring to the party is that our spacesuits provide a lot of mobility and dexterity even when they're pressurized. So, and I've spoken with NASA astronauts that have actually done spacewalks in the Russian Orlan suit as well as our suits. And now some of this they know who I work for, so I'm sure there's a little bit of bias that comes into this. But I've been assured by several astronauts who have done spacewalks in both that there's just no comparison. That our suits are much more comfortable, much easier to move in than the Russian Orlan suits.
Wow, interesting. All right, what do you got for us, Bernadette?
It's a plumbing-ish question.
Okay.
You called it.
So this is the other question. This is the other question that always comes up.
Dan told me there are 3.
We've had 2 of them so far. So back in the Apollo era, they had some sort of fancy plumbing. They used a condom connected to some other stuff. Don't really want to go into the details there. Today in the EMU, both male and female astronauts taking spacewalks wear what's called a MAG, a maximum absorbency garment. It's an adult diaper by any other term. And that's the first thing they put on. And then they put on the liquid cooling and ventilation garment, which is kind of an undergarment that has fine gauge tubing running through it. And then they put on the spacesuit itself.
All right. I think we got a couple more here. Dave, yes, again. Let's see, involved after Apollo 1 fired to remove all flammable material. Oh, and your company ILC settled on betacloth. Please describe and explain that material. Excellent. Davis, yeah, we love Dave.
He obviously knows his stuff.
Oh yeah.
So betacloth is kind of a made-up term for this fabric blend that we use on the TMG layer. And it's somewhat proprietary. It's got several components in it. It's got Kevlar in it, and that's for the the micrometeoroid protection piece of it. But it's also got Nomex woven into it, and that's for the fire retardancy. And it also has Teflon fibers woven into it.
What does that do? What does the Teflon do?
That's more or less a legacy from the Apollo programs that we just sort of kept around as we've evolved that fabric. And that was to try to reject lunar regolith, the lunar dust that really sticks to everything, because it's got really sharp edges when you look under a microscope, because there's no water or air on the moon. So there's none of those things that cause erosion here on Earth. So if you look at dirt here on Earth, it's got rounded corners because every grain of sand or whatever gets blown around or washed around in water. and it's like the rock tumbler that we used to use as a kid to polish rocks. It polishes it. It rounds off the edges. On the moon, you don't have any of that. So the dust up there has very sharp edges. It's like tiny burrs that, when you walk through a field and you get those if you're in the right climate, in the right area, you get those burrs that stick to your legs if you're walking through scrub brush. It's sort of like that, but on a microscopic scale.
And it's very abrasive to joints.
Oh,
yes,
yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah,
and so
the Teflon,
the Teflon in the fabric was an attempt, because it's a very low coefficient of friction material, attempt to get that that material to slough off.
All right, let's see what else we have.
Okay, this is just
welcome back, Bernadette.
Yeah. Okay, Bernadette, the YouTube is great for watching the video, but the comments work actually much better on Facebook. Basically, Bernadette, you'll only see the YouTube comments, which actually all of our comments so far are YouTube. So you'll probably see Dave's also. But you're
talking about in the comment stream, because on the screen, all of the comments are
we see all of the comments.
You'll see them all here, Bernadette, even if it's from Facebook.
Yeah,
so
and I post them up onto the screen. And so she goes correct plumbing. So we guess and then, so they go into space wearing a space diaper. Yes.
Yes, they do. I've spoken with many astronauts, and today's spacewalks typically last around 6.5 to 7 hours. They've gone as long as 8+ hours.
Right.
And that's a long time to resist the call of nature.
It is. All right. So I think we have one more from Dave. Thanks. Yeah. Thanks, Dave.
Just out of curiosity from me, before we get to Dave's, do you think there's any movement on actually putting plumbing back into the suits?
We're not looking at that. The mags work really well. It's an elegant, if somewhat crude design that is easy to accommodate men and women. So we don't have to do any kind of special plumbing things different in the suits, particularly today. And as we move into the Artemis missions, there's a big push to make sure that the suits accommodate a wide range of people sizes, and body dimensions, male and female. So we're probably going to stick with the mag for the foreseeable future.
Okay. What you got, Dave? Your company makes airbag landing collars for spacecraft. Did you develop the bouncing ball airbag landing system? Yeah. Okay.
He's asking, did you guys develop the bouncing ball
airbags for
the Mars lander?
Yes, we did.
You did. I didn't know. Cool.
Yeah. So as we're sitting here speaking, there are 4 sets of landing airbags sitting on the surface of Mars. So we've got some Mars garbage up there that were designed and manufactured here in central Delaware, near where I'm sitting now. I'm at home now, but
what a crazy idea that went so well. You're like, that's never going to work, but darn it did.
We're also making the landing airbags for the Boeing Starliner spacecraft, which lands, it lands on land rather than in the water.
I didn't know.
Yeah.
Awesome. Very cool. All right. So Bernadette, why don't you consider Zoom meetings? Oh, wow. See, Zoom doesn't do what StreamYard does. That's why I have used Zoom for the show. It just doesn't work quite as well. We can share screen, we can share video, but we can do a lot of other things here that we can't do on Zoom. Thanks for asking, though. All right, David, what you got? We got a lot of problems getting that deal. Dan, what do you say?
Actually, so we're back. Are we back to the Mars rovers landing airbags there? Yeah. Actually, the biggest challenge there was getting them to inflate rapidly.
Interesting. Okay. But you obviously managed, because my God, that thing works so well. And it actually, I guess it's weighted so it lands on the proper side.
Well, no, it bounced and rolled.
Right.
So they were the bags when they inflated on all sides.
Right.
Of the container that had the rover in it, and then it sort of rolled and bounced for that last little bit of losing the last little bit of energy. And then the bags deflated and the rover rolled off. We actually have a great picture on the wall in one of our conference rooms from the surface of the moon that was taken from the rover after it drove off of the deflated landing airbags, and then the camera looked back at the landing airbags sitting on the surface of Mars.
So it is Mars. Okay, I was gonna say moon.
Did I say the moon? I meant Mars.
It's late there. I get it. I get it.
It's after midnight. It's past my bedtime.
Yes, right. Oh, do we get another question?
No.
Oh, awesome. Last night, please. Okay.
Still on the Zoom thing.
Yeah. I appreciate that. I have my reasons. Thank you very much. All right, so just a couple of things that I kind of thought about that you haven't mentioned yet. Where do we start? How about that's the top one. But all right, tell us about Joanne Thompson, and then we'll talk about a couple of other ones after that.
Okay. Well, we have several seamstresses that are still alive that work with us. They're all retired now, but work for the company back in the Apollo era. And the two that I've had the most contact with in the time since I've joined the company, and again, they're all retired, so I feel that I don't want to impose on them too much to learn about the company history. And I want to respect their retirement because they earned it, certainly. But the two that I've spoken with most are Joanne Thompson and Gene Wilson, and they both have a fascinating story. Gene Wilson actually had to fly down to Cape Canaveral and do some repairs on a suit at one point. She got to go down also to the launch of the Apollo 11. So they're wonderful ladies, and I don't know what else to say about them. They're just a delight to be around.
Well, I really appreciate the story that you said. You mentioned the movie Hidden Numbers, Hidden Figures. And you related the Joanne Thompson story. Is like we kind of have our own Hidden Figures story with Joanne Thompson. So,
well, it was Gene Wilson actually was the one.
Oh, okay. Sorry, I thought it was Joanne.
If I could share my screen for a second here.
Yeah,
do that.
You should be able to. Can you see how?
Should be down at the bottom where it says.
Yeah, I've got it here. Share screen. There we go. Share. So is that working?
It's not.
Do not see it yet.
Here. Add to stream.
Oh, add to stream. Here. Thank you, Jeff. And we can also make it bigified.
There we go.
So that's Gene Wilson being interviewed for a podcast that aired 2 years ago, or a little more than 2 years ago now, around the 50th anniversary of the first moon landings.
Cool.
And she keeps that. She always takes that scrapbook with her. You see, there's a book in front of her, right down here, and that's a scrapbook of some pictures she had from that era, as well as other memories. She has signatures from some of the Apollo astronauts in that book. That's just, and she's just a delight to be around. She's funny. She's engaging. I understand she was only 19 years old when she was doing the work on the Apollo suits. But she was just a heck of a seamstress, from what I understand.
Cool. And you said that they had to actually come out there and get measured.
Yes.
And so, of course, now it's laser scanning, and I'm kind of curious, if you talk about that, that's great, but I'm kind of curious about how the laser scanning kind of works and what that does, because they don't have to come to you anymore, do they?
No, they don't come to us, but the suits, again, today's suits aren't custom tailored to each astronaut. The most customized part, and not all astronauts get this, but the most customized part of today's suits are the gloves. And that's where we do the laser scanning of their hands to make sure that they'll fit one of the existing gloves. If they won't fit one of the existing gloves, then we do hand molds of them, and use that then to as the basis to build a new custom glove around.
Interesting.
I have a funny story about Nicole Stott. She actually works for us part-time now. She's a retired NASA astronaut, and she when she was in high school, she broke her little finger on her right hand, and they didn't set the bone properly. So if you look at her hand, from sort of that knuckle joint up, the top part of her finger sticks off at an angle, and none of the existing gloves that we had at the time fit her very well. So we made her a custom set of gloves specifically to accommodate that once broken finger that got the bone got set the wrong direction.
Oh, interesting. And you told me that there is a pub with all the signatures from astronauts from.
Yes, there is. So who would have known that all the spacesuits were made and have been made for the last 55 years in central Delaware? So we're right near the Atlantic Ocean, and there is a local pub that, and I thought this was just sort of an apocryphal story, that it was just a legend, but I actually went and visited the pub myself to verify. The Apollo era astronauts, when they'd come here to get measured for gloves, they'd fly in on their jets into Dover Air Force Base, which is just north of our facility, and then come to our facility. But then in the evenings, if they had to stay over several days, in the evenings they'd go, there was one pub that, I don't know, all the astronauts, I guess, spoke with each other and decided this was the local watering hole that they should go to. And they ended up signing the wall on this. The pub owner asked them to sign the wall, and he has preserved those, or whoever still owns the bar today has preserved those signatures. They keep shellacking or varnishing over the signatures to try to keep them in good shape.
Cool.
They're somewhat faded today. I actually went to the bar to check it out, and they're very faded today. But if you know what you're looking for, you can figure out whose signature is whose.
Oh, I'd love to make that pilgrimage. I think we had one more from Bernadette.
Oh, she said she has many more questions about spacesuit design, and can she contact you by email?
Well, this is a great opportunity to show the website. Should have done it before too. So ilcdover.com. And I don't know how someone will get in touch with you directly, Dan, and I don't know if you're allowed to. I know you have some ITAR rules that you have to respect. But that's the website for your company.
That's the website. I can give out my email address. That's fine.
Okay.
And if I get asked a question that I can't answer due to legal reasons, I'll just say I can't answer that due to legal reasons.
Perfect.
So I have no problem saying that, as long as people don't have problems getting rejected on potential questions. My email address is KLOPPD. So it's my last name, first initial, but behind my last name without anything in between, no dot or dash or anything. So it's klopd@ilcdover.com.
Cool. All right. Thank you so much. So let's see. At this point in our show, we usually talk about the stellar events that are coming up this week, and I do have some this week. Oh, science fiction. Yeah. Okay. Now do recycle human. They do actually on the space station. They recycle the water.
Yeah, they've they have an experimental unit on the space station.
Oh, I thought that was a regular thing now.
Well, it's kind of a regular thing, but I think they still call it experimental.
Oh, I see. Dan, you probably know this question.
Well, actually, we make a component that goes into that. The whole system's made by Paragon, but we make a component of that system that goes into that urine recycling. But it's too big a system to fit inside a spacesuit. So that's the question there, I think, related to trying to do that inside of a spacesuit.
Trying to make a still suit into a spacesuit.
Got it.
We don't have the tech for that.
No. Because June, that's what they actually take everything. They recycle everything that the body expresses. All right. So was there one more, or was that?
No, she just Bernadette just said that she understands about not necessarily being able to answer
questions,
everything.
right? All right. So stellar events this week. We're talking November 5th through the 12th. On the 8th, Venus and the Moon are in conjunction, and that's going to be in the evenings after sunset. You want to look west, but go quick. The moon is 4 days old, so this should be very beautiful. It's also the National STEM/STEAM Day on the 9th. Mercury and Mars are in conjunction. You want to catch them in the morning, though, before sunrise. Also that day, Pluto and the Moon are in conjunction. The moon is 5 days old, and it serves as kind of a signpost for finding Pluto. Of course, it's not going to be... If you've got
Mount Wilson.
It's not visible naked eye, but there are ways to see it otherwise. Also, where Blue Marble Week is going to be doing their reusable rocketry. I got that the November 9th and 10th. We've also got the Northern Taurus meteor showers. It peaks after midnight, and I've got a couple dates. Every year they're maybe slightly different. It's either like November 9th or 11th into the 12th, that kind of thing. There's not very many of them either. So, while there's a bunch of meteor showers, some of them are more spectacular than others. On November 10th, Saturn and the Moon are in conjunction. You want to look south early in the evening. The moon is 6 days old. That should be very beautiful, too. Also, on November 10th is the weekly space hangout. Their guest is Dr. John Forbes. He's studying stellar nurseries with 3D printed models. That sounds fascinating. On November 11th is the first quarter moon, and Jupiter and the moon are in conjunction. That's going to be early evening, high in the sky, and looking south. And then we're back to the Friday night show on November 12th. We're here Fridays at 9 p.m. Pacific time on the Everyday Spacer Facebook page and the Everyday Spacer YouTube channel. I'm going to start something new because there are a couple of interesting kind of ongoing events. They don't have a specific date to them. One is called Unfold the Universe. You can also look for hashtag Unfold the Universe and find out how to enter a contest. And this is to imagine what the Webb Space Telescope might reveal. I think it's for young people, but you want to look at do search for Unfold the Universe or the hashtag Unfold the Universe, and the deadline for submissions to that is December 18th, 2021. The next kind of ongoing event is you can design moon digging robots. This is Lunabotics, junior contest. It's a NASA event. And I think you have to be used to enter it. However, if you like to participate still and you're an adult, you can be a judge. So I would look for Lunabotics Junior Contest or NASA Contest. The winner from each category will be announced March 29th in 2022.
Okay, I've got a couple more, Bernadette.
Okay.
If you didn't get his email address, just PM us on YouTube, and we'll send your email address to.
And these are available on replay right after the show. Right
so just PM us with your email address, and we'll send that on to Daniel. And
what's the next one? I see another one there.
Yes.
About what?
Do you know about the Carefree Dark Sky Initiative?
Oh, I should know though, shouldn't I?
No. Okay.
Now we do.
Well, she's mentioned something about the Phoenix group, so.
Okay.
They're
all right.
They're kind of involved in dark sky, so.
Yeah, we should know about that. If you don't mind telling us more, that'd be awesome. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Okay. If you or someone you know has done something interesting involving space exploration, science, or astronomy, we'd love to share our live. Join us again next Friday, November 12th, where we will show you the Citizen Science Project Planet Hunters NGTS, which stands for Next Generation Transit Survey, another Zooniverse project. You may find the next new exoplanet.
That sounds really exciting.
Previously unknown, yeah.
I can't wait to share that with you. And we are looking forward to future guests. We're having Dr. Adam Diper back again on November 19th. He'll be talking about his helium-3 experiment, not space juggling. Chris and Shane from the Actual Astronomy podcast will be with us on November 26th. And we have to nail it down, but I'm pretty sure Dr. Pamela Gay can join us on December 3rd. And we are in talks with a few more people. But any last questions? Looks like no?
Nope.
Thanks so much, Deanne. We really appreciate you being here. I know it's late there, so we're going to wrap it up and say have a great week, everybody, and we'll be back next week.
See ya.
Yeah.
Good night.
Been my pleasure.
Thanks.